Welcome to Season 3 of the Healthy Living Doesn't Have to Suck podcast. I'm Melyssa with a Y, double board certified lifestyle medicine coach, size-inclusive fitness specialist, author, and speaker dedicated to helping changemakers like you drop the struggle and create a healthy lifestyle you can love. This season, we're diving even deeper into conversations with guests from all arenas of the health and wellness industry, focused on making healthy living feel easy, enjoyable, and sustainable. Through my book, coaching community, online fitness studio, and corporate wellness packages, I'm here to provide the tools, strategies, and support you need to feel your best. Because when you show up as your healthiest self, you're unstoppable. All right, y'all, let's get to it. Happy day 3 of Lifestyle Medicine Week 2025. So excited to share this guest expert with you today. Mike is one of the fitness and medicine powerhouses that we get the chance to hear lots of updates from, hear what has worked well for him within his business and how he advocates to better incorporate movement as medicine across our country and kind of the globe too. So I'll go ahead and let us get into the episode, but thank you all for tuning in and enjoy. What up, Changemakers? Welcome back. And I am so excited to introduce our guest to you today. Mike Stack is joining us to talk about our Lifestyle Medicine Week special series, highlighting our physical activity pillar of lifestyle medicine. So Mike, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Melyssa. I'm really excited to be here.
And I know you and I connected through the fitness and medicine member interest group through ACLM. So I'm really excited for you to come on and share your knowledge with our audience today. But for those of our listeners who might be meeting you for the first time, do you mind sharing a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an exercise physiologist by trade and training. I have not spent a lot of time in the clinical world, have spent more time outside of the clinical world working with just the adult general population. I'd say the vast majority of my experience professionally working with clients comes from working with people who are 35 to 65 years old that maybe haven't had the best relationship with exercise during their life, maybe with some health issues and some orthopedic issues. And I did that on the individual level for the first part of my career. As time went on, I wanted to amplify my impact. So I started a business, Applied Fitness Solutions, which has now been in existence for going on 18 years. We're based in Southeast Lower Michigan, and we're in the process of making a bit of a transition more into the healthcare space, which is an exciting transition for us. And then as time has gone on, I've also found that one of the biggest ways to achieve an impact is to work in the policy and systems change space. So I spend most of my time right now, it seems, doing just that. I'm the president of the Physical Activity Alliance. We're the nation's largest group of stakeholders focused on the policy and systems changes to make the active choice the easy choice in America. ACLM is a board organization of the Physical Activity Alliance, and we do a lot of work at the federal level working on policy and systems related to physical activity. And then I have a nonprofit that I started here in Michigan. We're working with the Department of Health and Human Services here in the state on developing and implementing a state-level physical activity plan, which we hope to be able to export the framework we're using out to other states. I really look at my career arc as starting working with the individual, and that was something I was very passionate about and was very impactful. But over time, I've wanted to scale my impact, and through being a business owner, through being an advocate for exercise as medicine, and for being someone that works in the policy space, that's just able to amplify my impact. So I definitely wear many different hats, but at my core, I am an exercise physiologist. And I'll say this, and this could probably be a common theme throughout the entire podcast. I believe there's nothing more impactful you can do on a minute-by-minute basis than move. If you think about it, and we'll talk about the guidelines of 150 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity, there's nothing else you can do for 150 minutes a week that'll give you that bang for your buck. If you only ate healthy for 150 minutes a week, or if you only slept well for 150 minutes a week, it wouldn't make that much of a difference. Not to say those things aren't important. I'm just on a minute-by-minute basis. wow, physical activity has a profound impact on your health. And that's the perspective that I bring into any discussion like this.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things that I want to highlight because, first of all, I didn't realize you had your nonprofit established. That's so amazing. And the work that you're doing to help pilot this program to be able to scale it is just phenomenal. And the other thing that you said that I absolutely loved was making the active choice the easy choice,
Hmm.
because that's something I commonly say is like, how do we make the healthy choice the
Yeah.
easy choice? Because
Yeah.
the way that we're currently living in the world, it's not set up that way. So really trying to find those opportunities to bring that in. And the last thing that you just mentioned was the power of movement, because there really is like nothing as fast acting as getting your body moving that can shift your energy levels, your mood state. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just such a powerful tool that I think often gets overlooked because people sometimes have a little bit of a relationship with exercise that comes from a place of trying to punish our bodies
Yeah.
or doing it because we have to, and really missing that key component of focusing on how movement makes you feel and what are
Mhm.
those immediate benefits that you get from it. So I love that you shared all of that. And moving into our educate section of the podcast, you were touching on some of the optimal health guidelines, the 150 minutes per week. So, can you share a little bit more about what you hope listeners will learn from this episode about physical activity today and how exercise can be medicine for our minds and bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would distinguish a couple of important things right off the bat. First, the difference between physical activity and exercise, because I think we use these terms interchangeably. I think even professionals like you and I will not necessarily conflate the terms, but we use them in an interchangeable way that I think that needs to be distinguished for the public. So, physical
That
activity
part.
is any bodily movement that's produced by your skeletal muscles that increases energy expenditure. So that could be going for a walk, that could be playing with your kids, that could be cleaning, that could be mowing the lawn. And physical activity is something that is normally unstructured. It's infinite in the number of things you could do to be physically active. I mean, we could sit here for the next day and a half and just name physical activity. I think there's the compendium of physical activity from the University of South Carolina. And I remember looking through that in college. And one of the things it said was like churning butter as a physical activity. And although none of us are probably churning butter anymore, that just speaks to the infinite nature of it. And normally physical activity is a little bit less intense than exercise.
Mm.
And then exercise is planned, structured movement. It's finite. Like we can only name a certain number of exercises you can do. Now, there's a lot of them, but it is a
Yeah.
finite list. It's normally more intense. And this is the way I like to frame it up. Physical activity is designed to improve your health, whereas exercise is designed to improve your fitness. And
Mm.
fitness is an important thing because it allows us to do all the things that we want to do physically in our life. So aerobic fitness, muscular fitness, those are, but foundationally, health is the first level that we need to be addressing. And that's what physical activity really addresses. So when I talk about getting people moving, I use the term movement very broadly. And this is the reason that I really like to over index on the term moving and under index on the term exercise, because I've been in this industry now for close to 26 years as an exercise professional. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had people tell me, I'm just not an exerciser. Exercise is just not for me, which
Right.
I can respect that and respect someone's autonomy to say, hey, it's not my jam. However, I've never once met any person on the planet who just told me moving's just not for me. Right? It is such
Yeah.
an approachable and inclusive term that's really what I want your audience to understand, is that exercise is the icing on the cake, whereas physical activity is the cake itself. And it is the area where we can get the most bang for our buck from a health perspective. And I
Hmm.
think so many people think they need to start with 3 or 4 days a week in the gym. And you use the word punish yourself earlier and all these
Yeah.
connotations that going to the gym has for many people. And that's not the starting point. The gateway to that is just simply moving. And keep in mind, Melyssa, I say that as an exercise physiologist that believes strongly in the power of exercise, and as a business owner who makes his money by people coming through my doors and exercising in my four walls.
Right.
But objectively, we know that only about 20% of the American public engages with the commercial fitness industry. So that means 8 out of 10 people aren't really exercising in the conventional sense that we think of it. And with it, only about 25% of the American public meets our guidelines for physical activity. So
Right.
I think we need to think more broadly about moving. And so in terms of an important take-home message, this would be it. Don't worry about exercise first if you're not somebody that's physically active. That's like trying to, run a marathon before you can even walk a mile.
Yeah.
Start just by moving. And again, we talked about the 150 minutes. That is the recommendation that comes from the Department of Health and Human Services. It also is the World Health Organization recommendation. But I think the thing that gets lost in that recommendation is what's the most important part of it. And the most important part of that 150 minutes is not going from 100 to 150 minutes. It's certainly not going from 149 to 150, because it's not like something magic happens at 150.
Right.
If you look at all the research, the biggest improvements in health and the biggest reductions in disease and mortality come from when you go from no minutes of physical activity to some minutes. And if you look at all of these graphs, they're all the same thing. It's going from 0 minutes to 30 minutes per week of physical activity. You see an exponential reduction in disease, an exponential improvement in health. And then as you start to get to 100 minutes, 125, 150 minutes, you start to see that curve flatten out. And at that point, you're not seeing the same magnitude of change in health benefits. Now, granted, you will be seeing bigger improvements in fitness at that point, but
Sure.
I think it's just so important to understand that we just need to focus on getting moving in any way that is meaningful and enjoyable for us. If that's in a 5-minute bout, if that's in 5 1-minute bouts, whatever it is, all movement counts. And I think that's the big thing I want people to take home, is that you don't need to exercise to be healthy. You just need to move to be healthy. And the biggest changes in your health will occur from when you go from doing just a little bit of movement to just a little bit more movement. That's a profound shift in the paradigm of how we think about movement. And I think that's something that everybody needs to remember.
Yeah, I appreciate you making that distinction too between physical activity and exercise, because I'm thinking back to previous podcast episodes, and I don't think that's something that we've ever covered in all of the conversations that we've had about fitness and movement. So I think that's really helpful for people to hear and understand, because I know I've worked with people who may be going on regular walks and they don't think that it counts. No, you're being physically active. That's a great step to take. So I think hearing that distinction between physical activity for health promotion and exercise for more fitness and kind of performance enhancement is huge for people to hear. So thank you for sharing that. And talking about the optimal health guidelines, we're mentioning this number, 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity. And I think sometimes people might feel overwhelmed by that. So when we're talking about making that jump from that 0 to 5 to 10 minutes a week, what are some strategies that you've seen work really well for people to feel a little bit more empowered and confident around getting started with movement?
I think the first kind of overarching strategy is just never forgetting what we just talked about, that it does all count. And when we say it all counts, there was always this conversation in the academic circles of, do you need a minimum threshold of movement per bout for it to confer a health benefit? Does it have to be? At one point, the American College of Sport Medicine suggested, based on the research, it was a minimum of 30 minutes in one bout. And then that changed over the years. And as the research has gone on to look at this more deeply, they found that all movement counts. If you got that 150 minutes in 150 1-minute bouts or one 150-minute bout, that would probably confer equal health benefits, although I think the latter might be logistically difficult for a lot of people. So I think that's the first thing, is realizing that all movement counts. And this thing that kind of follows on from that is, because all movement counts, the thing that I think empowers people more than anything else is realizing that if that's true, then they can find movement that is enjoyable and meaningful and fun for them. And I've seen so many different people over the years find movement that they connect with. And I'll use myself as an example. I'm a meathead at heart. That's how I got into this. And I own that term meathead. And I love to lift weights. That's what I love
Yeah.
to do. And I really enjoy it. And that's my form of meaningful movement. And it's in the gym with my employees who work for me so I can connect with them socially. And it's just the whole
Right.
experience I love. I am not ever someone that's going to join a running group. I hate it. Like I hate running. I don't want to talk to anyone when I'm running. And so that's not my jam. And my parents and they're in their 70s, and I could tell you the form of physical activity they find most meaningful is playing with my 10-year-old and 7-year-old nephew. Like
Yep.
they love it, and that's meaningful for them. And in fact, that's so meaningful for them. I look at my mom. She is somebody who she strength trains. Now, I think she likes it to some degree. I don't think it's her favorite thing to do, but I
Sure.
think I think she realizes that doing that helps her play with my nephews, which is her most meaningful form of movement. So I think
Yeah.
realizing that everything counts, and because of that, realizing you can connect with whatever form of movement that's meaningful for you is so critically important. I think in our day and age of optimization, sometimes we forget about what's most important is not what's optimal, but what's probable, meaning what's the thing you're
Yeah.
probably going to do. And it's probably the thing you enjoy doing. And so I think if you can own your right to choose the things you do from a physical activity perspective, that really gives you, I think, all the empowerment you need. And certainly,
Yeah.
if you have specific health concerns or if you have specific
Yeah.
fitness goals, then yes, you may need to work with a professional that can help steward that process. Man, just getting moving in a way that you enjoy that's meaningful for you is so important. Now, I'll give a plug to one of my really good friends and colleagues, Michelle Seeger. She has a book called The Joy Choice. And I absolutely love this book. And she talks about how finding the thing that is joyful for you with regard to movement is it's so critically important. So please check out Michelle's book, The Joy Choice. She's a world renowned behavioral scientist around movement.
Amazing.
And the last thing I'll add around thinking about movement is I think it's very empowering when we realize the most profound benefits to moving are the proximal benefits rather than the distal benefits. And I think sometimes people forget about this. Like we talk in terms of moving as, hey, it's going to help you live longer and it's going to help reduce your blood pressure. It's going to prevent a heart attack. And all those are great things. Don't get me wrong. But those
Right.
are in the distant to very distant future. Things that are most rewarding about movement are the immediate benefits, which are the psychological and the emotional benefits of movement. And I think if we can anchor our fulfillment of movement to those proximal benefits, like, man, I
Yes.
feel a lot better. That's so much more reinforcing. Like, we're a society and we're a species, just on an evolutionary biology level, is we're driven by instant gratification. And I talked about that before.
Oh,
And
yeah.
man, if you can shift your perspective from this is going to prevent a heart attack 25 years from now to, man, this is going to help me feel better, be calmer, be nicer to people around me, and just enjoy my life better after I do it, all of a sudden movement takes on a much more potent and powerful role in your life.
Yeah, and you addressed some of the common barriers that we tend to hear, right? Which one is time.
Yep.
Like, I don't have time to exercise. And even just hearing that phrase, all movement counts, I think can be so empowering for
Mhm.
people to recognize, okay, I don't have time to go do a 30-minute group fitness class, but you know what? I'm going to turn on my favorite song and I'm going to bust out a dance break like between
Mhm.
meetings today because I have the 5 minutes. And I think because I'm a sucker for puns, I think it was the American College of Sports Medicine that dubbed the term snacktivity. Are
Oh,
you with that one?
I've not heard the term before. I've heard
It's actually
activity.
trademarked.
Yeah,
So
I
TM.
yeah, I've heard activity bites before or things like that. But I love the concept because it's getting at what we're talking about here. It's not
Yeah.
the you've got to plan it in. It's, oh, I got done with the Zoom meeting 5 minutes early. I can do a lap around the office and go talk to my friends.
Yeah, absolutely. So breaking down that kind of myth that we don't have the
Yeah.
time to move, but we can find the time to move. It doesn't have to be in those dedicated blocks per se, but that's definitely something to strive for.
Mhm.
And can we replace scrolling on social media with going for a walk around the block instead? And yeah, so I think that's super helpful for people to hear that all movement counts, all movement matters. And then the other thing that you talked about was that enjoyment piece, where there are people out there who thrive off of run clubs
Yep.
and the socialization and chatting while they're running and jogging. And yeah, I am not that person either, although I do love the energy of races like 5Ks. Like that is what gets me moving because I look forward to that.
Mhm.
So my mom and I are actually getting more into those again. So this is the first time in a very long time that I have been jogging. And I think it's important to recognize those phases in life
Yes.
too, where sometimes you're going to be more inclined to do a certain activity. And then other times you might find something new that you enjoy, like pickleball. Oh my gosh, pickleball is a huge thing that's blowing up right now.
Yes.
So maybe that's someone's sport and they just don't know it yet. So always being open to try something new as well to
Mhm.
find what type of movement that you enjoy. And then, yeah, selfishly, I want to plug how you said coming back to the meaning behind the movement, how you were
Mhm.
sharing about your mom playing with the nephews and how that's important to her and it gets her strength training more. So that why, what is that motivating factor for
Mhm.
you? And what is the importance behind incorporating more physical activity and exercise into your routine? And that actually tagged into something that I wanted your thoughts on and hopefully some elaboration because there's a lot of people out there who think strength training has to be like the heavy powerlifting and that they're going to get bulky from it. But you and I know the benefits of strength training. So, can you share a little bit around some of the optimal health guidelines? Because we've talked about the moderate intensity activity in the 150 minutes, but does that include the strength training? Is that separate? Can you share a little bit more about strength training in particular and what the benefits are?
Yeah, first, just to be clear from a guidelines perspective, there's two elements to the guidelines. There's the 150 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity. And then that's the what we call the aerobic component. And then there are 2 days per week of muscle strengthening. That's the recommendation. And quite often people forget that other element. And so first, to be clear, that's the guideline, but also let's be clear on what a guideline is. This isn't a commandment. This isn't dogma. This isn't a rule that you have to follow directly. It's just the guideline. So with
Yes.
that being said, to talk about the importance of strength training, I like to frame it up like this. At the end of the day, life is you v gravity, right? Like we're just all trying to fight gravity because eventually
To stay upright. Yep.
we're all gonna end up in the ground at some point. So we're all just trying to fight gravity.
Yep.
And when you look at all of the research on exercise in general, and then you specifically start to drill down on strength training, you start to realize that it is literally the fountain of youth on every single level. So everything I said earlier about meaningful exercise for you is true, but I think we also have to realize the reality that there are certain things that we can do from an exercise perspective that can greatly improve our functional capacity as we age. And strength is the rate limiter to everything that we do in life. It's even the
Mm.
rate limiter to that 150-minute per week guideline, because if you don't have strong enough muscles to get up out of the chair, to go down the street fast enough to increase your heart rate and your breathing rate, you're never going to stress your heart, your lungs, and your blood vessels, and you're never going to get an aerobic benefits. Just broadly speaking, I would say that strength training on a minute by minute basis probably is the best form of exercise you can do as you age because it addresses the rate limiter to your functional capacity. Now, as far as what that looks like and what that needs to be for people, that's the beauty of it. The strength training works because you just place a stress on the muscles more than what the muscle is capable of tolerating by a little bit. And then its job is to get stronger to tolerate that stress the next time it runs into it. So this doesn't mean lifting ridiculously heavy weights. It doesn't mean we have our good friend Andrew Mock, who's a strong man. In fact, he's I think the
Yep.
4-time California's reigning strongest man. It doesn't mean doing the things that Andrew does. It simply means doing basic movements like squats, movements like wall push-ups, movements like band rows, or things that activate some of these big structural muscles of the body. And you mentioned something earlier around getting big and getting bulky. Building muscle is an extraordinarily hard thing to do. I can tell you, as someone, like I said, who's a self-described meathead, who's literally spent his entire life trying to build muscle. If I build a couple of pounds of muscle a year, I'm ecstatic, right? That's a
Yeah.
hard thing to do under optimal circumstances. So most of the adaptations people see to strength training really occur on the neurological level more so than the anatomical level. A lot of the actual anatomical changes are just really reducing the likelihood you're going to lose muscle mass. But really, it's more the neurological adaptations, the connections between your brain and your muscles that can become stronger, that make us stronger and powerful. And I'll touch on the difference between strength and power in a second. But so to be clear, I see people all the time in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond get stronger, be able to lift more weight, but they don't gain any muscle tissue. And if anything, they may be losing a little bit of muscle tissue as they age. So it's not the quantity of the tissue that matters as much as the quality. And to that end, being strong is important, and strong is the ability to produce force, to be able to pick up that bag of dog food off the ground. Power is also something that's critically important. And people use strength and power interchangeably, but here's the difference. Strength is the ability to produce force. Doesn't matter how fast you produce it. Power is the force you produce and the speed you produce it at. People will go, okay, that seems important if I'm a football player, but I'm a 60-year-old guy that just wants to play with his grandkids.
Sure.
The things we do during our day that require power are almost limitless. Like getting up out of a chair requires power. Try to get up out of a chair slowly. You don't. It's a power-based activity. So those are things that can be trained for. And I'll point all of your listeners to a massive prospective cohort study that was done that looked at hand grip strength as it relates to both overall mortality and cardiovascular mortality. And they looked at a number of different factors that were predictive of overall mortality and cardiovascular mortality. And they found the biggest predictor in that study wasn't systolic blood pressure, it wasn't BMI, it wasn't anything other than hand grip strength.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't mean that if you have a ridiculously strong handshake, you're going to live forever.
Sure.
Hand grip strength is just a proxy for overall body strength. It is. And so we're just really starting to realize the profound benefits of strength training, and more research that's done really speaks to how it can preferentially improve functional capacity age. Modern medicine gives us the ability to live a longer life, not necessarily a better life. Strength training gives you the ability to put years into your life rather than just the life onto your years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so much value in knowing that, because first of all, it busts a couple of myths that people think around strength training and resistance training. But ultimately, it's about improving our quality of life, and not just through getting stronger, but being able to not live longer, but have that life added to your years. I think that's such an important clarification, because it is in general that we're, as the US population at least, we're dying longer because we're riddled with all of these chronic diseases as we're aging. So anything that we can do on the proactive end to help at least reduce our risk of that, in addition to not just movement, but the nutrition, the stress management, the sleep, all of the lifestyle medicine pillars that we're talking about this week. So I hope that's really helpful for people to hear and understand, because there's just so many misconceptions about strength training. And I think people miss out on understanding that it's building muscle is part of it, that strength, that power, but also like it's going to help keep our bones strong and healthy too. And so that's going to reduce your potential risk of fractures if you fall as you age. So really just emphasizing that movement for life and movement for health piece of it, and having that nice well-rounded routine between the aerobic and the strength, and of course flexibility and balance and all of that too. But we've got so many things that we could have 4-hour discussions about, and that's why we have workshops like we do at Lifestyle Medicine Conference and things. But as people are really just soaking up this knowledge and this information, and now maybe they're feeling a little bit more motivated and confident to get started with moving, what kinds of resources or strategies would you recommend people seek out for starting to engage in more physical activity and exercise?
The first thing I'll say is this: I'll go back to some of the things I said earlier. I don't think we need to overthink it too much. I just think we need to get moving. That the book that I pointed out from Michelle, the Joy Choice, I think.
Oh, and I'll link that in the show notes too.
Great. And Michelle has another book that I'll point to as well, called No Sweat is the name of the book. So she's written 2 books, and I really like just her broad approach to thinking about movement. In terms of other resources that are out there, certainly the American College of Sport Medicine has a number of different resources that the public can connect with. Their exercises medicine program has a number of different resources through their website that I think are good resources. If you are looking for professional guidance on this, I would point you to a website that's URL is usreps.org. That's the website for the Coalition for the Registry of Exercise Professionals. And that website lists qualified exercise professionals that are in a position to help individuals work through maybe some of the challenges that are associated with movement. Maybe somebody does have a medical condition, or they do have an ache or pain and they're a little unsure of what to do. And so I think that's a great resource in terms of finding a professional that's in your area that we know is qualified. I would also just broadly say that looking for people who have some degree of academic credential, have that be a master's degree or a PhD in exercise physiology or something related to get your information from, I think can be very helpful. Unfortunately, we're in a day and age of the fitfluencers and social media, and everyone has a platform and a megaphone that they can yell from. And I would say that in many cases causes more harm than good. When I started my career, there was almost a lack of information that existed back in the late 90s. Now it's just, there's too much information. And
there's so much noise.
And it's so hard to be a discerning consumer. So I think being able to look at the credentials of the person that is telling you something, understand if there's some substance and evidence behind it, and avoid looking at their physique. And a lot of people use their body as their business card. That is problematic in a number of cases. Not to say everyone who's in amazing shape isn't someone who doesn't have academic credentials, because there certainly are, but a lot of people just are very blessed with amazing genetics, and they train really hard and they do a bunch of things right and they look great. But just because you can do it for yourself under certain genetic preconditions doesn't mean you can do it for somebody else. So I'd say going to the evidence-based community, I think, is the place to go. And American College of Sport Medicine, American College of Lifestyle Medicine, American Council on Exercise. These are organizations that exist to provide this information to the public about what is an evidence-based and a safe way to engage in a physical activity or an exercise program.
Yeah, that science-supported, evidence-based sources are what we're looking for, everyone, which is why I wanted to invite people like Mike onto the podcast to help you sort through that noise and get some reputable resources to start pursuing for your journey into more physical activity. And Mike, I appreciate you highlighting the whole like body as your business card thing, because someone who's been on the opposite side of that, where I felt self-conscious because I didn't look like a group fitness instructor that you would normally see in like the Les Mills videos and stuff like that. It was really encouraging to hear that sometimes that doesn't help people. And I've certainly found that sometimes the people who find me to take my virtual fitness classes are, one, because they've had a bad experience of being judged in the gym. And so they're looking for someone who understands that, but also just someone that they can relate to, who's not showing like all of these really advanced moves that they're lost with, but really just that foundation. And certainly group fitness in a virtual setting is so much different than being able to get that personalized, customized, tailored guidance from working with more people like yourself, the exercise physiologists, the certified strength and conditioning coaches, and people like that. That's definitely something important for people to think about. What do they want their experience to look like? And with their current knowledge and fitness level, what's going to be most supportive to them to help avoid things like injuries and making sure that they have proper form. So I think those are all really important to highlight too. So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
As we're winding down in this guest episode, I always ask, and I'm sure people have been able to pick up this along the way through our conversation today, but for guest episodes, I always love to ask, when you think about the message, healthy living doesn't have to suck, how do you strive to bring that into your life and or work?
Yeah, I think your statement says a lot of it, right? We need to engage with the things that we enjoy. And I think that has to be the starting point for all of this. And this is what I always encourage people to do. And this might get a little deep, but I think it is very helpful to framing this up. think about your values that you hold dearly as a human being and try to ask yourself, how can I connect the things that I'm doing from a healthy living perspective to those values? And I'll again use my mom and dad as amazing examples. One of their values, like unequivocally, is family. And they realize that one of the best ways that they can connect with their value of family is to eat healthy, exercise, live a healthy lifestyle, because that allows them to be able to connect with their family in a way that they wouldn't be able to if they
Mm,
weren't doing those things. So I think we're a lot of people might go wrong is that they start out with goals. I want to achieve this goal. And don't get me wrong, I'm a goal setting person. Like I love setting
yeah,
goals. But
yeah.
if those goals aren't anchored in something more meaningful, like your values, then they're really easy to give up on. And I'll say this, I've seen many people over the years give up on losing 20 pounds or give up on getting stronger or something like that. I've not seen a lot of people that I can remember during my career that gave up on their grandkids or gave up on being able to walk their son or daughter down the aisle for a wedding or something like that. And
Yeah.
so when you can anchor what you're doing in what is enjoyable for you, but also in what is fulfilling for you in terms of how it relates to your values as a human being, that's the superpower for sticking to a plan. And I would say if you've struggled to stick with a plan and you've had the thought that, wow, this healthy living thing sucks, what I would say is twofold. Re-examine what you've chosen to do, because it's something that if you think it sucks, it's clearly not enjoyable. And then on the flip side, after you recognize that, say, okay, what is enjoyable and how can I connect this back to the things that I value most deeply and root what I'm trying to accomplish in those values. And if you're able to do something like that, then all of a sudden you start to shift your identity. Then you go from somebody who isn't an exerciser or isn't somebody who does a lot of moving to somebody who is. And that ultimately goes back to what we said earlier, making the active choice the easy choice. It's easy for
Yeah.
my mom and my dad to be active because they know it allows them to play with my nephews. And if you could figure out a way to create that through line in your life, then you're just going to be compelled organically to move because you realize that it allows you to connect with the life that you want to live.
Oh my gosh, that shift in perspective is so amazing too, because people will get disappointed if they're solely focused on an outcome and striving for that
Mm-hmm.
outcome. And then if they don't reach it, then it's why did I even try? Although they may have made improvements
Mm-hmm.
along the way towards that outcome, but shifting it towards that value based goal, I think that is going to be such an important highlight for people to take away from this episode. Because I certainly hadn't ever thought about it that way, where it truly is a value based goal. I usually talk about process goals, which are
Mm-hmm.
like the steps that you need to take, but even taking that one step further and tying it to those values, that purpose, that meaning behind why you're making these changes is what will help you stay in the game. So that was, oh my gosh, I can't wait to share that clip. Everyone is going to just be absolutely mind blown with that, and it's going to change their lives. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Amazing. Mike, we really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today for our Lifestyle Medicine Week series. I know that everyone is going to walk away from this episode just having a totally new mindset around physical activity, movement, and exercise. So thank you for being here with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
All right, change makers, tune in tomorrow for another episode. So can't wait to see you back. And until then, keep it real, stay positive, and let's get moving, shall we? As a quick, friendly reminder, the information in these podcasts are always strictly for educational purposes only. Thanks so much for listening, Changemakers. And if you can please remember to head to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe, rate, and review. It will help this podcast reach other changemakers so they can start listening and tuning in each week. As a bonus, if you've been wanting to make healthier choices but don't feel like you have the time or even know where to start, make sure you check out my Lifestyle Medicine Mini Makeover. It's a free 7-day email series designed to help you take small, powerful steps toward better health that can fit into your busy lifestyle. Each day, you'll get an email that educates you on one of the lifestyle medicine pillars, along with a simple mini challenge to put what you learned into action. If you're ready to level up your health with lifestyle medicine, then sign up now at healthylivingdoesn'thavetosuck.com/makeover and let's do this together. By the end of this week-long challenge, you will have success in showing yourself that healthy living doesn't have to suck.